With the 2025 season in the rear view, it is time to look ahead at the 2026 offseason. Over the next 4 weeks, Jeff Bell and I are going to be doing positional offseason previews of every single position, and we are starting with quarterbacks. Jeff, let's start with some of the unrestricted free agents who could have a market for them, guys that we expect to play somewhere next year, maybe. Daniel Jones and Aaron Rodgers. Let's talk through both of these, starting with Daniel Jones, obviously coming off of the late season injury. We don't know if he's going to be ready for week one. We don't know if he's going to be ready for training camp, but he hits the market as a free agent. Do you think that he's going to be retained by Indiana, or do you think that he tests the market and finds somewhere else to play next year?
I think he's going to be with Indianapolis. I know they were talking about it during the last game at Houston. I caught during the broadcast, and they were basically saying how they talked to Daniel Jones and everybody talking to Shane Steichen. It's basically a done deal, more or less, hypothetically, that he's going to be back with Indianapolis. I think they have been they were happy with what they saw out of him. Maybe with them, the bigger question might be: do they go with Riley Leonard as the backup? Do they look to move on from Anthony Richardson? Do they maybe look to rebound Anthony Richardson's value if Daniel Jones isn't quite ready to go at the beginning of the year? I think those might be the bigger questions with the Colts, instead of, is it going to be Daniel Jones as the quarterback long term, or in the near term at the minimum? I do expect that to be the case.
And that just makes the most sense. Like with him potentially not being ready for OTAs and training camp, it's going to be really tough for him to go to another team, learn the playbook, get up to speed, and play at any point in this season. So bring him back to an offense that he already knows, that he has already shown success in. I'm with you. I expect him to be an Indianapolis Colt as well. So I think the discussion here then is, how do we value him in fantasy? Because he's still relatively young. We saw him performing like a QB1 prior to the injury. We talked about Daniel Jones a lot this offseason, and some of these other guys that have followed similar trajectories, whether it be, Mac Jones breaking out in San Francisco or Sam Darnold breaking out last year in Minnesota. This is a guy who has the tools. He has the pedigree, the draft capital, all of the things we want to see. And while he might have been written off as just dead in dynasty circles a couple of years ago, now I think we've got to be looking at him as a top 15, top 20 guy.
Yeah, I think the injury is going to give a big discount there, anyways, and especially looking at redraft leagues. That injury is going to give a huge discount between name value and that injury. I think in Dynasty, it's just tough to say trade him right now, because no, who's going to want to trade for him? It's tough to
Right.
say buy him right now, because and maybe it is a buy right now. Maybe if you don't feel comfortable selling him, maybe it is a buy in that level, or maybe it's just a hold right now. Probably in terms of buying, people that are holding him are going to want to view him as, you're always viewing the asset as the best when somebody's trying to buy it from you, and you're always viewing it as the worst
Mhm.
when you're trying to buy it from somebody. And so somebody holding him saying, I've got found money, top 15 quarterback here, you're paying up for that in Superflex. Somebody in the opposite end saying, well, you got an injured quarterback that he's not going to be ready to start the year, and it's Daniel Jones anyways. I want to grab him at a discount. And so I think that oftentimes in those situations, you just see a disconnect on actually making something happen.
So let's talk not necessarily trade market, because, like you said, things get funky there. Let's say you're in a startup and you need a quarterback two, quarterback three, something like that, and you're looking at a 31-year-old Jared Goff or a 28-year-old Daniel Jones coming off of this injury. Who do you prefer?
I probably would be preferring Goff in that area. I think the argument would be valid and fair to have Daniel Jones ranked ahead, but I probably am looking. I mean, you're talking later as your quarterback too. Part of me wants just both, like at that level. If
Yeah.
if you're kind of in that range, try to maneuver to get both of them. But I think that, yeah, you've probably punted the position to end up down there anyways. So I would defer to Goff, just feeling a little bit safer. I mean, Goff, for all the struggles with Detroit this year, he still kind of did get to the raw numbers that you'd expect him to get to. So that's kind of where I end up there.
So let me throw two other names out to you, this or that, in regards to Daniel Jones. Sam Darnold, same exact age. We know Sam Darnold is going to be with Seattle again next year. Who do you prefer, Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones?
I'm a sucker for Darnold, man. I mean, I really am. And being linked there with Jackson Smith and Jigba. We don't know. Clint Kubiak seems pretty headed for a head coaching
Yep.
job, so maybe we do see a shift there offensively. I do like the Sam Darnold story. Maybe part of it's feeling like lost, like sunk cost, where having this opportunity to have Sam Darnold for cheap and missing that. But I did grab him some places last summer because once they drafted Jalen Milroe, you were able to get a pretty strong discount on Sam Darnold, and we saw everything that you could hope to see. Seeing him, I think he did get to 4,000 yards. It was really close this year.
One more name that I'm going to throw out here, J.J. McCarthy, who's still just 22 years old, or Daniel Jones.
I'm a sucker for the young guy. I mean, I make the poor decisions around the young guy in a strong system probably way too often, and so I would lean McCarthy there in that position, and it costs me usually in Dynasty, but I do tend to lean that direction.
So, sucker for the young guy. Let's go ahead and talk about the oldest active quarterback in the NFL right now, Aaron Rodgers, who becomes a free agent this year as well, leading the Steelers to the playoffs this year. I think there's a lot of reason to be excited with some of the things that we've seen late in the year from Aaron Rodgers. But what do you expect here, Jeff? Do you think the Steelers run it back and try to bring Rodgers back again in 2027? Do you think that, or I'm sorry, in 2026? I'm getting way ahead of myself here.
Yeah.
Do they try to run it back with Aaron Rodgers next year? Or do you think that they turn that page? Do you think Aaron Rodgers signs with another team? Do you think he retires? I have no idea at all. And I don't think that we're going to have any clear answer on this until we get that Aaron Rodgers saga that seems to happen every single spring. We'll probably start getting answers around April or May. But what are your expectations right now for anybody looking to make any moves in Dynasty?
My expectation is that Aaron Rodgers will be the week one starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, are my expectations right now. He seems to be happy there. It seems to be they're happy with him. I think that it seemed like a really good connection between him, Arthur Smith, Mike Tomlin. I think there's trust there in the organization. We know that it's an organization that definitely values trust and values continuity. And I think that I just don't think he's ready to hang him up yet. And maybe he is, maybe he does, but leading them to the playoffs. And obviously we've not seen what turns out in that playoffs, but I do think that Rodgers will be the quarterback for the Steelers next year. If it's not going to be Rodgers, I mean, who's it going to be? It's going to be Mason Rudolph playing again, like what? But I think it's going to be Rodgers. And I think maybe Will Howard might be a little bit more aggressive with the development, or they dip their toe back in the draft again just to try to reload this position to be ready, because you're talking about a player that would potentially be 43 by the time you get to the end of next season. I mean, we saw Phillip Rivers come back at 44, but it's
Saw Tom Brady playing at 43. Yeah, I mean it's not unheard of the way that these guys take care of their bodies nowadays. So it's one of those, like, I'm not moving mountains to get Aaron Rodgers in super flex leagues. One, I mean, he hasn't been that productive in this offense. It's been a very low volume passing offense, a lot of little dink and dunking. He's not the Aaron Rodgers that he was in Green Bay or anything close to that player. So kind of off the dynasty radar outside of like super desperate managers who are looking for a weekly streamer, but we got to at least talk about it. But Jeff, you said something. I don't know who else would be the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that's a great segue to the next guy that I want to talk about, Malik Willis. Because do you remember the Malik Willis Pro Day where Mike Tomlin was just like slack jawed? Like he was just so enamored with the things that Malik Willis could do. Now, this is one that really piques my interest because I liked him a lot coming into the draft, and I know you did as well. And it was a very disappointing start for him in Tennessee. But what we saw this year, and not even this year, last year, we saw good fantasy production from him in a very run heavy system. This year, we saw a game like that as well. But then he came out in a pass heavy game script and looked phenomenal, like hitting deep shots to Christian Watson, still having the rushing upside that we want to see. And this is why we talk about these rushing quarterbacks, why we're so enamored by them in fantasy, because they can just break fantasy. If you are a league average passer and you've got that rushing upside as well, you become an elite fantasy asset. So Malik Willis is a very interesting guy. I've seen some insiders speculating that he could end up getting something like a 3-year, $60 to $70 million contract. We might also see another team kind of give him a 1-year prove-it deal. But this is a guy that I am just enthralled with right now because the upside for Malik Willis, who still, I'm looking right now, it's still just 26 years old, could have a bright future ahead of him and could end up a week 1 starter somewhere.
The Matt Flynn special coming right up, former
Mhm.
Packers backup quarterback that he never really did get a chance to be a starting quarterback, ended up with the same team that Russell Wilson became the starting quarterback for the Seahawks. But that has nothing to do with each other except for both being the Packers. But I think that you're exactly right there on Willis showing limited glimpses towards the end of the season. Definitely enough to get people excited about it. It's still, I feel like I'm still on the fence on Willis in terms of handing over the starting job, because at some level isn't this the same argument as like a Justin Fields or as Trey
Sure.
Lance, where like you are really limiting the attack that you're going with. We just haven't seen Malik Willis operate one of these 35-40 passing attacks. It's really been run heavy. Let's make things as easy as possible. But that being said, we have seen Willis extend plays. We've seen him, the arm talent really show off. There are a lot of things to unpack there. And maybe another, like Aaron Brooks used to be a backup
Mm.
quarterback for the Packers way back in the day. And then he ended up with the Saints
With
and
the
got a starting
Saints. Yep.
job. But maybe something like that. But I've seen, well, I think it's a little bit more like wish casting speculation about linking him to the Dolphins, and if Mike McDaniel's the coach of the Dolphins, and kind of the exciting things potentially that Malik Willis could offer within that speed spread offense potentially. I've seen that link. I think you're right on track there with Tomlin potentially. I mean, where you got, it doesn't really for, like, you look around the league and you don't feel good about a lot of quarterback positions, but at the same time, you don't feel bad enough about them of like handing somebody immediately a starting job when you kind of look around the league.
Yeah, and I think, things happen every single year that we just don't expect to
Right.
happen. And as we work our way through
Sam
these
Darnold
quarterbacks,
not being a Minnesota Viking was one of
exactly. And like, Geno Smith right now still under contract. Like he is potentially somebody who can leave. And then we're looking at
them.
a pretty desirable landing spot. And I mean, the offensive line needs some work, but there are some weapons there that we could get excited about if a quarterback landed in Las Vegas.
Well,
Same thing, the
they have
reason
the
we had
number one
excitement
pick,
for Justin
Dave,
Fields.
so it's going to be
They
Fernando
do.
Mendoza.
They do, yes, and but, even that, like, we do see sometimes these bridge quarterbacks coming in, and I don't know if Willis is the guy that they want there, but, like, you talk about Justin Fields, Malik Willis. I think there's a lot of Justin Fields in Malik Willis's game, and I've heard this speculation about, like, a 3-year, $60 million contract. I think the contract that Justin Fields got last year is kind of the baseline for Malik Willis, and I'd expect him to get something similar to that, like a 2-year, $40 million contract with basically 1 year guaranteed and then essentially like a team option for year 2. I think that's probably what we'll see with Willis. But again, there's so many potential landing spots here. And I think, we're talking about the upcoming free agents, but it's when we start talking about the potential cuts that we can see some of the openings and landing spots for some of these guys. So a couple other guys that kind of fit into the Malik Willis box, the fun mystery boxes, as we are calling them on this show. Trey Lance, Zach Wilson. Jeff, is there any possibility that either of these guys are going to be starting week 1 next year, or are these guys both just kind of destined to be backups at this point?
I would expect them destined to be backups at this point. I mean, Zach Wilson, we didn't even see him beat out Quinn Ewers in Miami
Right.
when they did go to a different position. So that kind of throws a little bit of cold water on any sort of hope of rebounding there with Zach Wilson. Trey Lance has gotten some opportunities, obviously earned the backup quarterback job with the Chargers. He hasn't really done much with those opportunities. There are some teams that, like Kansas City, like, are they going to go out and bring somebody in that could be a week 1, week 2 type of a starter? Maybe that might be a potential spot for somebody, a bridge or something like that. But I think when you look around the league again, you kind of look at the top of the draft here, where we've got the Raiders, you've got the Jets, Cardinals up there. Right now, we're projecting Dante Moore to be in the draft. We do expect Fernando Mendoza to be in the draft. We saw today Ty Simpson declared for the draft. So you kind of start to link some of the quarterbacks at the very, very top and expect them to fill some jobs. But I think it's, yeah, where you look around the league of where's the starting job, basically. That, and I think that if that's open, Malik Willis would be first in line to get an opportunity.
So let's talk about some of these older guys. We already talked about Aaron Rodgers. We expect him to be the Steelers quarterback next year, but there's some other old guys that are going to be hitting free agency as well. And you talk about that kind of like short-term bridge while Mahomes is getting ready. We could maybe see the same thing in Indianapolis if they don't want to lean on Riley Leonard or if they move on from Anthony Richardson. So when I'm looking at Joe Flacco, who has a history with the Colts, funny enough, Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Marcus Mariota, we don't expect these guys to be week one starters, but again, we say it all the time, crazy things happen. It's really tough to predict how things are going to shake out in the offseason. So are these guys that like are even I think Marcus Mariota is still the youngest of the bunch and a guy who has some rushing upside when he gets these spot starts. He's probably the guy that we're most intrigued by, but are any of these other guys, given the age, given the unlikeliness of them playing in week one, are any of these guys even on the fantasy radar, Jeff? Dynasty radar, I should say.
I don't think they're on the dynasty radar. I mean, at this point, Mariota was not bad when given
Yeah,
opportunity
I don't know.
this year. And really, when you break it down, his numbers weren't all that different than Jaden Daniels' numbers. But
And I think he probably returns to Washington just like because he's a I don't want to compare him to Jaden Daniels, but can do a lot of the same things and kind of they don't have to drastically change the offense. It's not like when the Colts had to go from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco or from Daniel Jones to Philip Rivers. Like you can still run the same offense with Marcus Mariota that you can run with Jaden Daniels.
yeah, and I think that that's a really good point. And we're going to have probably getting flamed on YouTube already for comments about comparing Malik Willis and Justin Fields, but we're not. We're simply saying players that the RPO action, the ability to run as quarterback, is instrumental to their success at the position, and that allows opening up their talents open up to attacking more in a vertical passing attack instead of kind of quick read it, see it, get the ball out of your hands. Because to have somebody that's explosive and creative with the ball in your hands, you don't exactly want them to get rid of the ball immediately because that kind of takes that element out of the game. And so that's all we're simply saying there. And I think that you're exactly right in having Mariota. And it does fascinate me when you do see like very, very different, like when Cooper Rush was the backup quarterback to Lamar Jackson. It was like these guys like are very different. Like
Like you
okay, like,
had Tyler Huntley. Why did you let Tyler Huntley walk? Like you had
yeah.
another version of Lamar Jackson out there. Yeah. And it always kind of is head scratching to me when you see that sort of team construction where you just have a completely different type of backup quarterback where you have to just change everything if the starter goes down.
So this might be a good point to talk about this, but I have the harebrained idea of the quarterback bullpen, basically, of like
Mhm.
having like just this pool of veteran quarterbacks sitting out there so that we don't have to watch like I'm sure his family is very nice and all, but Chris Oladukin, like with the Kansas City Chiefs, like that was some horrible quarterback play. And so like just so you don't have to like if we could have plugged like Russell Wilson into there instead of just some of this really, really bad quarterback play that we run into. But I do kind of you see Flacco, and obviously Flacco was traded last year into a situation where he was able to play, and then Wilson ended up in a situation where he was not playing. Like we'll get there with Kirk Cousins or like Jimmy Garoppolo maybe is another one, but like at some level, I feel like these guys instead of signing with a team, like just work with coaches and be active, be work with making sure that you're in shape, making sure that you're understanding offenses, and like be having a way to showcase that I feel like is
Basically,
more
Philip
valuable than
Rivers, but not at
right.
44 years old in a desperation thing. Like, just make it known. I'm not going to sign anywhere, but when your
Yeah.
guy goes down, I'll be around.
Yeah, and yeah, you want to see me throw like we'll do a YouTube show like every day of like us just throwing live to we'll have whatever wide receivers aren't signed and we'll just throw them every day to show you, but getting stuck in a situation where you're not playing at the stage of your career because it is kind of one of those things of it's like the Ryan Fitzpatrick of it all of like they're not you don't want to make them your starting quarterbacks, but at the same time they're not it's not horrible if they're out there for you. You're not completely nuking your offense, but being at a guy like Joe Flacco, you don't want to be stuck in a situation where you're sitting behind Josh Allen all year long and you're just watching Josh Allen play all year long. You're not getting a single snap. So it's kind of at some level leaves some flexibility there. And I know that's unorthodox. It's not usually the way that it functions, but I feel like that would be the practical way to approach it with some of these guys.
So let's move on to the next tier here, Jeff. And this is the possibly getting cut tier. And I think Justin Fields is the one that kind of headlines this group right here. I think that he is all but done in New York. Shut down late in the year with the injury, but he was benched before that. And we saw this the way that they structured his contract when they signed him last year. Like we said, it was a 2-year deal that was basically one guaranteed year with a team friendly option if they chose to pick that up in 2026. I don't think they will be picking up that 2026 option. The other player on this list, Kirk Cousins, it looked like he was all but gone as of a little bit ago, but restructured his deal, and now he might be staying there as well. If they choose to move on from him, they're going to have to eat about $35 million in dead cap, so they might just keep him there over the next couple of years. There aren't a ton of savings if they choose to keep him, but assuming Justin Fields isn't a New York Jet next year, he's going to hit the market as a unrestricted free agent. We're probably looking at him in the same kind of bucket as, funny enough, two guys from his draft class, Trey Lance and Zach Wilson, a guy who's just at this point, we love Justin Fields. The Bears fan in me, the Buckeyes fan in you. We both wanted to see it work out for Justin Fields, but I think we saw this year that experiment is probably done, at least for now.
It is. Yeah. I think in terms of this was his last, and we said before the season, this is his last best chance to show that he is a starting quarterback in the NFL. Now he kind of falls into the bucket of, he should be in the quarterback bullpen, ready to call him in and like, let's go and do something else here. But I think that probably for him, you really start to, and especially a player that needs a lot of development, you look at where's the best situation for me. Like, is it going to, are we still there on Kevin O'Connell as the quarterback whisperer? Is it going to Minnesota and kind of like rebounding there and really getting your PhD in this Shanahan system? Is it going to the 49ers? And we don't have, probably need a Mac Jones category, Dave. We dropped the ball here.
He's just in a category by himself, like just the Mac Jones bucket.
But that type of thing where we've seen some of these high quarterback like a Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold kind of rebound their career. A guy that was a former top 10 pick rebounds his career because they get the opportunity. And at some level too, when things are going sideways like that, the failure is just, you're steeped in the failure. You need an opportunity to reset, because I think he's not one of the best 32 quarterbacks. He's definitely one of the best 45 quarterbacks on the planet, though. And so I think that at some level, you need an opportunity to reset. You need to catch your breath. You need to be in a situation where you can start to feel successful again. And if that opportunity does arise where you're able to get back on the field, you're put in a good position. And so I think that should be the focus here for Justin Fields.
So talking about Kirk Cousins, I'm looking into it right now, and it seems like it can kind of go one of two ways. Like they could. I see you shaking your head. You think the restructure means that he's as good as gone? Is that your read on this, Jeff?
Not at all. The exact opposite.
And that's what I thought too. Yeah, I see this. It seems like people are kind of divided. I see the restructure as a reason to keep him, which makes me wonder. Kirk Cousins didn't look terrible down the stretch. Michael Penix, showed some flashes, but also didn't look great. Do we think Atlanta just goes into this training camp with both Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins and say, like, we are having a good old-fashioned quarterback battle here? Do you think that's what happens?
So, from what I've seen, the leading candidate for the head coach job for the Falcons is Clint Kubiak. And do you know what Clint Kubiak did in past jobs he
played in Minnesota and coached Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson 2 career seasons.
Yes, he was the quarterback coach.
He was also in 2020 too, wasn't he?
In 2019 and 2020, he was the quarterback coach. He was not in 2013 and 14. He was a Vikings quality control coach. In 19 and 20, he was the Vikings quarterback coach, and in 2021, he was the Vikings offensive coordinator. So he knows Kirk Cousins very, very well. And so that to me feels like if you're going to go out there and hire Clint Kubiak, you're definitely going to keep Kirk Cousins around, which starts to make things really interesting for Michael Penix. And maybe they're just concerned about Michael Penix's availability to start the year, or just his general availability, because I think I saw something crazy where it was like 7 of his last 8 seasons have ended with a season-ending injury, and the only one that didn't was the national title game.
I could be wrong there, but I think they've all been knee injuries. Like, he has had knee injuries for quite some time now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that at some level, they probably are concerned about him being healthy and available and knowing that. And I think part of the other part of it, I don't know that Kirk Cousins was like definitely kind of buddy buddy with Michael Penix and like kind of like the coach on staff more or less, but at the same time, everything, the Falcons were a team that I covered last summer for Football Guys training camp reports, and everything around the Falcons was basically Kirk Cousins being a consummate professional. He's doing everything that you could hope to see. And so I think that on some level, they recognize that he was put in a difficult position and he handled it very, very well. I think they maybe some concerns about Michael Penix being ready. Then if you're going to go hire Clint Kubiak, I mean, he's a guy that knows Kirk Cousins very, very well.
And I think that's a good point too, because so many people remember like the initial kind of gut reaction that Kirk Cousins had, where like he was brought in on
Yeah.
I don't know if was it $160 million. I can't remember exactly, but he was brought in on a huge deal. He was expected to be the long-term starter for the Falcons, and then they shocked everybody when they selected Michael Penix. And I remember Kirk Cousins, he had that soundbite that really circulated where he said something along the lines of like, "It's not my job to coach a young quarterback or help develop a young quarterback." And I think people have just held onto that. But last year, these guys were roommates during training camp. They really developed this good relationship over the last season or so. So I think a lot of people still hold on to that soundbite that was very reactionary from Kirk Cousins when he was kind of surprised by this draft pick, like the rest of the world was. But it seems like since then they have overcome that and had a much better relationship. So I could see them going in with these two and just kind of trying to figure it out. Any other thoughts on the Falcons, Jeff, or do we want to move on and talk about some guys who might be getting axed from their teams?
No, I think that all makes sense, and I missed the news on the restructure, but that makes perfect sense. And I did see the news that or the early rumors that Clint Kubiak was their target, and that all makes sense. That you can go out there hire Clint Kubiak as your coach, Kirk Cousins having a long time relationship with him, and then you kind of reset the board a little bit for Michael Penix, similar to what we talked about with Justin Fields of maybe get a chance to reset and kind of catch your breath and be put in a good position. And really, we know Kirk Cousins is towards the end of his career, but comes in, would be like a PhD in Clint Kubiak's offense, know it cold, and then Penix would have a really good learning opportunity.
And I'll just say, I know this is the quarterback show, but Clint Kubiak, if he goes to Atlanta, one of my main reasons for being so in on Jackson Smith-Njigba this year was the history of wide receiver ones with Clint Kubiak, whether it was Justin Jefferson having his big breakout year, Brandon Ayuk having his career season, Rashid Shaheed last year. So go out and buy you some Drake London if you can. I'm not going to come cheap, but one of my favorite buys right now that I am willing to buy very, very, very high on. Now, let's talk about some guys who might be getting cut. And we already mentioned Geno Smith, so we'll start with him a little bit. Um, Jeff, I think with Pete Carroll not likely to get a head coaching job, I'd be very shocked to see Geno Smith starting anywhere in 2026. I don't think he's going to retire, but I think that he's, just going to be a backup for the next couple of years. And nothing wrong with that, but he's probably going to need an injury to see the field. And to me, when I see a guy, 35 years old, probably not starting. You can make an argument to keep him rostered in your deep dynasty leagues, but he's mostly off the radar in dynasty leagues, assuming he doesn't get a starting role, which I think was a very slim possibility.
Yeah, I mean, either you put him in the quarterback bullpen and you wait to call him up potentially, or maybe you are at that point where you do kind of maybe back up Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or something like that and say, let's try to win a ring here. And I'm
Right.
here if you need me to plug in. And Kansas City, that might be an interesting one. If Mahomes isn't quite ready to start the season, you start Geno Smith for a week or two. Then when Holmes is ready to go and you feel a little bit better about the backup position. But at some level, I think you'd like to win a ring, I think maybe in part of your career. So maybe that's the stage of the career that Geno Smith is right now.
So I think the more interesting player that is likely to get cut, and I don't even know if he's likely to get cut, Jeff. Kyler Murray. I don't know what to expect from Kyler Murray this year. Had Jonathan Gannon been retained, I'd have guessed that Kyler Murray would have been traded, released, like they would have moved on from him. But now with Jonathan Gannon gone, there might be a coach that comes in there and says, you know what, I could fix him. I like the tools. I like what I see with Kyler Murray. I can resuscitate this career. But you might also have a situation where Minnesota or another team says, we're going to trade for Kyler Murray to bring in some competition for our young quarterback. this to me is one of like the biggest inflection points in the offseason. Like, what is going to happen with Kyler Murray? Is he a Cardinal? Is he a free agent? Does he get traded? Does it like there's so many ways that this can break. And then when you start talking about like what to do with him in Dynasty, I've got him on a handful of rosters right now. And I don't know. I'm just holding him, but like I don't want to trade him. I don't want to go out and try to acquire him. And I'm sure there are savvy Dynasty managers out there right now that really think they know what's going to happen and are using that to try to get ahead of the market and leverage transactions for Kyler Murray. But I just don't have enough faith in reading the situation at all to make any moves here. I have no idea what's going to happen. Do you have any insight into this situation, Jeff?
I do know that I have way too many Superflex teams that have Kyler Murray and Tua Tagovailoa on them because I
Oh boy.
definitely this year it came fast and it came hard. But I think that Minnesota is an intriguing one that you throw out there. Really, at some level, I feel like the Dolphins and the Cardinals should just go to the league and say, look,
Seriously.
like we've got Tua here and we're ready to move on. You've got Kyler there, and it would be like murder both of our caps. Can we just get like an exemption here? We'll just trade these two guys out, and both of them can get a fresh start, and they can both go to a different situation, and let's nuke these cap penalties and just make this all equal across the board and give both players a new opportunity to do something else. But I mean Minnesota, I just don't know that they would be at the level of that much of a threat to JJ McCarthy right now. I think they
And they didn't even want
probably
Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold in that quarterback room,
they
but
didn't want Sam
a year
Howell in that
later, things
quarterback
have
room with
changed.
JJ.
Right. But I think it's a very different situation going into this season than it was going into last season.
Yeah, but I kind of feel like maybe like a Jimmy Garoppolo or something like that might be a little bit more of their play. But I do, it's maybe I'm the idiot. Maybe I'm just the one that, but I don't feel like I'm quite there on writing Kyler Murray off completely as being a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think that I understand. To me, what has happened is basically he's not developed in the way that you would hope with being the number one overall pick. He's kind of similar to the same type of player that when he was drafted, which was when he was drafted was good enough to be the number one overall pick.
Mhm.
You haven't seen the development, and then maybe there is some off the field. Maybe there's some like personality things because I do feel part of me does feel like between him and Marvin Harrison Jr., there's some personality things that were going on there in Arizona a little bit. But at the same time, I see Kyler Murray as a player not all that unlike Tua Tagovailoa, where it doesn't feel like they feel all that comfortable on pushing the ball down the field right now because of injuries, because of what it might have been. They're kind of taking the quick dump off and getting rid of the ball out of their hands instead of allowing plays to develop and push downfield, or Kyler Murray locking on to a primary receiver, not moving through progressions. And that's one of those things when you're 21 years old and you take them first in the draft, like, okay, we can live with this. Like it'll develop.
Right.
When you're close to 30 and you're paying the guy $45 million a year, you're out of the development window. And this is not the truck or the trailer. This is not the guy that is pulling your team towards the Super Bowl.
So let's talk about Tua Tagovailoa then as well, because I think it kind of works in, and you mentioned him, but it seems like he's all but gone from Miami. Gets benched late in the season. The Dolphins said that they're going to retain Mike McDaniel going into next year. It seems like that is just fractured between McDaniel and Tua at this point. I don't think they're going to try to run it back. So do you think there's a team out there like, Tua was in a perfect situation running this Shanahanian offense, having two of the best receivers in the NFL, a strong run game to support it, and really floundered more often than he flashed. So do you think there's any team out there that is going to say, like, I want to make Tua Tagovailoa a week one starter? To me, this seems like another guy who is destined to becoming a backup. Like there are just limitations to the physical play. Cerebrally, he just doesn't seem to be there all the time. He just kind of knows where he's going with the ball and he will put it out there, but can't really do much off script. Like it just seems like he's very limited at this point. I don't see any team taking a chance on Tua as a starter. And to me, I think like I don't want to say a second round pick. That feels like it's selling too low. But if I had Tua Tagovailoa in dynasty leagues, which I don't, I think you probably could just like sell for a second round pick and take what you can get at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, at some level, that's what you're dealing with, and I don't think the market on quarterbacks and superflex is nearly as hot as it was a couple of years ago, where everybody was trying to grab these young guys. I think
If you got
now
a
there's
pulse, you were a first round pick.
yeah, I mean, now, especially with Jacoby Brissett and what Jacoby Brissett gave us, now it's kind of like I think there's a lot more people that feel comfortable streaming or falling into a quarterback two option. And we talked about it throughout the season about how it always used to be that, the maybe like the Malik Willis and the Jameis Winston were rostered, but other than that, you would have 25 backup quarterbacks that would be available in your super flex leagues, and now people have gotten sharper or just moved in a different direction where they're not holding like the deep wide receiver or the random tight end they think could be Darren Waller anymore. They're all holding all the backup quarterbacks, and then somebody's already rostered before something happens. But I think when you're looking at him in Dynasty, you're really just looking to sell off a name right now, and probably you're
Mm.
looking to get out right now. If you have him, either you're looking to get out or you're hoping that one of the opportunities opens up that he could be the week one starter. Maybe. I mean, you look through the teams here, and I've got the team like the draft order up here to be able to look at it. And you've got the Raiders, you got the Jets, you got Arizona, Kyler Murray moves on from Miami. I mean, other than that, like where do we think that there are starting jobs that are
Right.
open right now? If Shadur Sanders is going to be the Browns starting quarterback, if I mean, you get through this list pretty quickly. And if we're already talking about Malik Willis and Mac Jones, and we want to see those guys start somewhere, if we're talking about Kyler Murray still potentially deserving a spot, there's just not enough chairs for the as the music goes. But we do see injuries create situations. Right now, it doesn't feel like there's room for enough guys that hypothetically think could still be starters.
So while you were talking, I was playing around on keep trade cut a little bit, just kind of seeing like what the market value is for Tua Tagovailoa right now, and he's actually being valued closer to a third round pick than
Yeah.
he is a second round pick. So the one that kind of jumped out to me that I think could be interesting right now, the market still prefers Tua Tagovailoa to Malik Willis. Now, if you have Tua Tagovailoa, would you be willing? Because I know I would. I'm looking at my rankings right now. I prefer Malik Willis straight up. Would you trade Tua Tagovailoa for Malik Willis straight up? Because I could see that right now where the market has a slight lean towards Tua. Malik Willis signed somewhere to be a starter. That's going to flip immediately. So I feel like this is why we do this show so we can kind of talk through some of these potential outcomes. That's something right now where the market may not be there, but I would take Willis over Tua.
Yeah, I think that that's a fair, valid place to land. My concern on that is we have not usually seen the league operate that way. Usually, what we have seen with the NFL is they say Malik Willis was a late day two player, and Tua was a top five pick. We're going to
Yeah.
give the blue chip top five pick guy another shot. Is what we usually see happen across the NFL more often than not.
I think
So
yeah. Sorry, I thought he was pick six, and I didn't want the YouTubers to crush you, but yes, he was the fifth overall
well,
pick in the
sometimes
draft.
you put the Easter eggs out there so that they it's part of the algorithm. They you know what you're doing.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you make a good point there. Like the league does tend to value draft capital a little bit more, but they also value tools. And I think that the tools that Malik Willis has are much more enticing than the tools that Tua Tagovailoa does. So to me, it's like I don't see a high end range of outcome for Tua, regardless of where he lands. Like he was in the best case scenario for his entire career so far and did very little there outside of the few boom games that we'd see here and there. Where I think Malik Willis, like, even if he's a backup somewhere, just getting those occasional spot starts from Malik Willis is still pretty appealing to me. So I think that's a move that I'd make. But again, that would just be me trying to get out from under Tua before I'd be, scared that it would just completely bottom out. Now, let's talk about some other guys. And this is an interesting group of guys. These guys are still under contract. They're with their teams, but they're guys that we might not feel like have 100% certainty to be the starter for week one or the entire season here. So we'll just kind of lump them all together. But Michael Penix, who we talked about a little bit earlier with Kirk Cousins, I don't think we need to dig too much into that because we already did. JJ McCarthy, we have touched on throughout the show, but I think that's worth discussing as well because there were just not a lot of good moments this year. And I know like he was drafted. Was it 10th or 12th overall? I think he was 10th overall, right?
I
eighth
think it
overall.
was because I think the Broncos didn't the Broncos think they tricked the Vikings to trade up and get JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, it was like McCarthy at 8. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was like McCarthy, Nix, and Penix were all kind of in that same cluster
Penix
around
went
him.
first. Penix went before them. Then I think McCarthy. I think Penix was maybe not. We could look this up so easily, but we're just
We
gonna
could.
say maybe
Instead,
this.
we'll
But
just guess and we'll
yes,
get
like
made fun of by the
old guys
audience
at a
if we don't.
bar, like in like 1998. Like I think maybe. Like, but yeah, no, I think it was Penix was like pick 8 maybe, and I think McCarthy was like I want to say he was not 10 maybe, and then I think Nix was
But
like 11 or 12.
this, to me, Jeff, kind of feels similar to Trey Lance in San Francisco a few years ago. It feels similar to Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis this offseason, where we say, like, the draft capital is there. They have invested heavily in this guy. Of course, he's going to be the starter. And then we get into training camp and we're like, wait, what? Like, Sam Darnold and Brock Purdy are both ahead of Trey Lance. And then we look at Indianapolis and we're saying, wait, Daniel Jones is beating out Anthony Richardson. And this is one of those scenarios where I think they could bring in a veteran that we don't even think twice about. And then all of a sudden it's, you know, early August and we're saying, wait, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to start week 1 in Minnesota instead of JJ McCarthy, or Malik Willis is going to start in week 1 instead of JJ McCarthy. So this is one of those where, like, I know you said it at the top of the show, like you are enthralled or enamored by these young guys and it has hurt you in the past. And I think a lot of people in Dynasty feel that way because he's still just 22 years old. He's got the draft capital that we want to see. But would it shock you if he isn't the week 1 starter for Minnesota next year?
I think that would shock me. I think that it would take somebody like Kyler Murray, I feel like, to actually get to that point because he did turn it around. He was playing better before the injury happened. So it would, for him to be flat out just not the starter for like a Geno Smith, that probably would shock me. But I think that you're right. I think you're on the right track. I think you make good points, and that's a good conversation to consider. It definitely is in play. I mean, there's certainly they could draft somebody in round 3, and he just goes out and wins the job. I do think McCarthy was playing better as he got more acclimated, as his experience started to grow a little bit, and the team was kind of moving around him. And then we saw that that injury, and then the re-injury. So I would be floored a little bit outside of, again, like they go out and get Kyler Murray and like, okay, well, we're walking into this, like this is guns blazing here. But I do think that they will probably be more aggressive with having a secondary option there.
So let's talk about another receiver, or I'm sorry, another quarterback that I think is in the same bucket as JJ McCarthy, a guy that we expect to be the week 1 starter, but also wouldn't be like extremely shocked if somebody else came in and took that job for him. Bryce Young, and he's coming off a good year. Like, you know, he not a great year, but good enough. Like he led the Panthers to the playoffs. They got in. It wasn't pretty, but they did it. They're in the playoffs. Good for them. But this is another one of those situations where, like, I don't think that they are fully invested in Bryce Young as the long-term quarterback. And while he probably is going to be the week 1 starter, crazy things could happen this offseason. So let's talk about both of these guys. Who would you prefer in Dynasty, Jeff? JJ McCarthy, who we just talked about, or Bryce Young? You know, if you're in a draft right now, and I know your answer is probably going to be a wide receiver or a tight end, but if you're in a draft and you really need a quarterback and you're looking at JJ McCarthy and Bryce Young, which one do you think you'd probably click on?
I'm going to go with Bryce Young here, probably still,
Same.
who number 1 overall pick in his draft. McCarthy was a guy that I just wasn't drafting a lot of when he was in his rookie, so I don't have a lot of McCarthy in all my dynasty teams. Maybe it was the Michigan of it all. Maybe I saw a guy that really wasn't asked to do a whole lot. Whereas I think Young, I see a player, and Young, it's interesting that we're talking about him here because this is the playing with fire of all of this, because anything we say, Bryce Young could go out there and in round 1 against the Rams throw for 5 touchdowns, and we are the biggest morons on the planet. Or he could turn around and throw 3 interceptions and look completely hapless. And if you're to say, well, I still think he's okay, like you look like an idiot. So Bryce Young's a fun one to be on here because we could be morons in either direction in the next 3 days. But it's definitely, I think when you're looking at it from a fantasy football standpoint, I mean, under the radar, Bryce Young is a little bit better in fantasy football than I think people realize. It was like one of those things of last year the expectations got to be so low because that rookie year was so bad that when he came in, it was like people thought he was better than what he really was. And then like this year, I feel like there was that level of thinking that it better than what it really was, and it didn't go there. So like the knee jerked the other way. But the reality of it is that he was still actually kind of decent in fantasy down the stretch. So I think that from the counting numbers obviously aren't there, but when you're looking at playing the quarterback position, the pre-snap things that was the reason why he went number one in his draft are showing up. But those things are there. It's just the problem with him is he doesn't have the ability to erase anything physically. It's not, the arm strength's not there. The
The
athleticism
leg
is
looks
functional, but it's not
I was gonna
like
say he was a little bit more nimble this year than he was his first couple of years. I saw him extending plays out of the structure a little bit more than he did in his first couple of years. So that was probably the thing this year that got me more excited about Bryce Young than anything else. Was just seeing that, like, some of the ability to extend plays that we saw in college is actually happening now at the NFL level as well.
it was, and he did get better. And again, that speaks to when we all realized that he's not throwing for 200 yards in any games, and we all freaked out. He started to add the rushing, and he started to get there in some other different directions. So I think it's that athleticism is probably getting more comfortable with the game. He's not a guy, obviously not Josh Allen, that's just going to break a
Right.
tackle and scramble around. There was definitely a window where the guy gets the hand on him at all and he's going down. I think he's kind of adjusted to that a little bit, and that probably has bled into some of the comfort and utilizing some of the rushing ability that he does have.
Let's talk about one more guy here, Jeff. Tyler Shough, second round pick. He ended up a starter this year. And, in fantasy, he was great down the stretch. We were getting a bunch of QB1 weeks from him. He looked good. He brought Chris Olave to life, which we love to see. Nobody's really been able to figure out how to do that outside of Jameis Winston for a half of football a couple of years ago. So we like what we saw from Tyler Shough. Do you think he's the long term answer for the Saints?
Right now, he's the long-term answer. I mean, he's the short-term, long-term answer right
Long
now.
term answer in the short term. Yep.
Yes, exactly. So he's a short-term, long-term answer right now. I mean, threatening potentially to win the Rookie of the Year. I think that they've got to be very happy with where they were with Spencer Rattler, and Spencer Rattler was functional. It was fun football. It was doing enough with Chris Olave for us to be happy in fantasy, but definitely was not winning any games. Hat tip to Kellen Moore, and you can start to see, I mean, the former backup to Justin Herbert at Oregon, Tyler Shough, and very built similarly, and Kellen Moore, former coach, offensive coordinator for Justin Herbert, and there's some you squint hard enough, late enough at night, maybe there's some similarities there.
So, the history of round two quarterbacks, Jeff, right? Like we get the very occasional, and to me, like when I see the list of round two quarterbacks, I think it's kind of funny that like the two guys that jump out to me would be Andy Dalton and Derek Carr, guys that went on to have like decently long careers and looked formidable. Do you think that that range of outcomes is there for Tyler Shough, where he can be one of those guys who is starting for the next 5 to 8 years and then develops into a backup and maintains a long career? Can you see that for Shough? I mean, maybe not just because of his age. He might not be around as long as a guy like Andy Dalton, but I mean, to me, like there was enough promising stuff there that we saw his rookie season that it wouldn't surprise me if at least like through the remainder of his rookie contract, 3 years out from here, if he at least is given that opportunity to start in New Orleans.
Yeah, I definitely. And I think that there's a little bit of context on that just because of the way that the quarterback position has been valued, the value has changed in the draft. Because there was, I mean, we remember when Blaine Gabbert, like Jake Locker year was like that era was basically if it looks anything like an NFL quarterback, we are taking him top 10 because this is what we're
The
going to get.
Brandon Whedon era as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
Yes.
And there's like any remnants at all of being a quarterback, we're going to take him. But I think now it's kind of moved in a direction of, I think that there were years where Jackson Dart would have been definitely a top 10 pick, and Tyler Shough probably would have been definitely a top 20, if not top 15 pick. Now teams have kind of moved the other way of saying, we're gonna take the blue chip position players off the board first, and if this guy is still on the board, we'll come back around with our other first round pick or our second round pick, and we'll give him a shot here. And so I think that that's that colors maybe some of the failures of former second round pick quarterbacks, of because it was a time where if anybody would have been considered a second round pick quarterback, he was going to be a first round pick quarterback. Now you've got guys that in that era would have been first rounders that give you an opportunity to succeed. And that's a roundabout way of saying exactly what you said to start with, that we've seen from Tyler Shough showcase the ability down the stretch to say, I think this guy could be the quarterback here.
Well, what we're doing in this episode is a lot of speculation, but of course, what we're doing is trying to lay the groundwork here, like let you know who is going to be available, guys who could move. And as we get deeper into the offseason, we'll get more information as rumors and the draft and other things start swirling. And some of these guys that we're expecting to get released do get released or get retained or get restructured. There's still a long offseason ahead of us. Over the next month or so, what Jeff and I are going to be doing is 2 episodes a week. One of them is going to be on rookies, and then the other one is going to be on these positional previews. So next week, we'll be talking about wide receivers. The week after that, we'll be talking about running backs, and then closing with tight ends. So be sure to tune in to stay up to date on all of the rookie knowledge that you need, as well as some of these positional breakdowns. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.